Welcome back to Fortunate Fishes. I'm Charlie Garcia. What kind of 12-year-old in London scrapes the yellow pages, cold calls businesses, outsources website bills to kids in America, and pulls in £3,000 a month? Millionaire by age 31. Anthony N.G. Monica, son of a plumber and accounting assistant, no connections, no venture capital, started a company at 21, pivoted it twice, lost all 4 co-founders, moved countries with no places to live for 6 months, built the client list to companies like Walmart, Best Buy, Sephora, and 8 of the 10 largest consumer electronic retailers on the planet across 40 countries. Sold the whole thing for 8 figures, all cash. His investor bought a boat and named it after the company, said Anthony had achieved the impossible. Now he's building Daily Body Coach because he learned the hard way what most founders figure out too late. If the machine breaks down, nothing else matters. Anthony, welcome to Fortunate Fishes from London.
Thank you very much, Charlie, and what an introduction.
Well, you've done some great things. And one of the things that impressed me is that your parents put you in a private school for 2 years that you had said kind of rewired your brain, and your best friend had jog-proof Walkman. You had one that skipped. So what did that do for you?
So I think it really showed me how other people were living and also opened my mind to actually what's really possible to achieve. I remember being so happy when my dad, actually it wasn't mine, it was actually my dad's Walkman. And he gave it to me, and I remember him telling me on a trip going to France saying, make sure you look after it. This is expensive. Don't take it for granted, and please bring it back in one piece. And I was like, okay, I'm so excited to be using this. I had one single, which was Eminem Without Me. And I was like, so excited to just hear that on repeat. I don't know how many times. And then I saw my friend, and he had like the jog proof version. It had like a remote control. And I was like, mine skips when I walk. And I guess I was just like, I really want that. And it made me so curious to understand, why does he have that, but I don't? And I think at such a young age, that was quite profound.
How old are you those 2 years?
So I would have been between 10 to 12 years old throughout those 2 years.
Got it. So at 12 years old, I'm playing baseball, soccer, whatever. You're scraping yellow pages, cold calling businesses, outsourcing website builds to American kids. What was different about you? Was it hunger, obsession, or something else that drove you at age 12?
So I think that one thing there really triggered me. And my father had a client who was called Paul McKenna. He's a hypnotist. He's quite well known out in the UK and also in the US. And he had a lot of self-help books. My father would receive a lot of those, like the CDs that he had, and I would listen to them as well. And it kind of changed and sculpted my thinking. Then that would lead me to another self-help book. And this kind of thing made me think, actually, anything is possible. Anybody can do it. And I think at such a young age, you can be really molded. You don't have any preconceived conceptions. And I think that naivety, really allowed me to say, well, I just want to be like the same guy on the cover of that book.
Did you ever get hypnotized yourself or no?
I got hypnotized more randomly, like more recently inside another community. They had a hypnotist come in. And I've actually worked with another hypnotist actually called Elliot Rowe, who's been like brilliant for me too.
You know, you mentioned something, and I'm a big believer in manifesting, and it sounds like, magic or whatever, but, you read books like The Secret who have done so well. I've always said that your brain is like a radio station that transmits and receives. You talk about your mind was really molded, reshaped when you were a young kid. How do you explain it kind of scientifically so it doesn't come across as like, new age stuff?
Yeah. Honestly, scientifically, I'm not quite sure, but there were so many moments that I clearly remember as a child. So I remember there was one time my dad, he took apart an entire Mini, the car, and the garage was just full of all these pieces everywhere. And he just had one book that was like basically a huge manual on how to like everything you need to know about the Mini. He took it all apart and put it all together. And I don't know how long that took, but it was a really, really long time. And I remember being like, what are you doing? I was like, this is taking you so long to do it. And he's like, you can actually do anything that you want. And even if maybe you're not the most talented at it, if you put enough time and effort into it, eventually you'll get it done. And I would see it kind of, I guess, being led by example. And that combined, I think, with my mum's work ethic. She did so many things, like going to work always super early. She'd come collect the kids, then work some more, prepare everything in the house. And she didn't ever once say that she was tired. I don't think I ever heard her say that.
And your dad was a plumber.
Yeah.
Your mother was a really hard worker. They kind of instilled that you could believe and create anything that you wanted.
Yeah.
So that never held you back. Tell me about your relationship with money, because when you're 12 and you're making 3,000 pounds a month, you know, what did you do with your money and how did that go?
So there's definitely nothing to show for that. I spent it on games. I spent it on clothing. I spent all of it. I remember there was a time I was spending so much of it that I was like, I need to start saving some of this. And I'd read then about that. And I even hid cash from myself inside a stack of envelopes. And I left it there for so long, I forgot it was there until like one day I found a few £100s in it.
What did your parents think of like a 12-year-old kid doing this? And do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have one sister. She's 4 years younger than me. My parents always really encouraged me. They never set any limiting belief on me, and they held me to like really, really high expectations. So I think a lot of the time I was quite pushed, and also encouraged to get what I want, but never any limitations were placed on me. They would always encourage.
Well, what about your schoolmates? Like, what did they think when all of a sudden, you have all this money? How did it affect your relationship with your schoolmates?
So I would say like when I was like really young, like around 12, I would just spend it on myself. I wasn't really talking to anybody about it. I think when became like a teenager, I do remember that, I'd cover the cost of going to the cinema for my friends, and I would do things like this that were maybe a little bit different. Um, but I didn't really speak much about it with my friends, to be honest. I do remember there was one friend of mine at the time. I told him later on when I was running my last business, I told him, things aren't going so well in this business. Like I was pivoting and pivoting. And he once told me, oh, don't worry if it fails. That's okay. Like most people do. And I thought, that doesn't sound very encouraging. It's like almost they wanted me to fail. I actually never spoke to that person again afterwards. Like I really tried to surround myself always with the right people, even to the extent, I remember my father as a kid would tell me actually to avoid watching the news when I was young. So to like kind of stay away from a lot of like negativity that was around and just focus on what you want to do. And to some degree, I think that paid off. Obviously, it pays off to also know what's going on around in the world, but there was some benefit to that too.
I agree with you. Somebody said that you are the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you surround yourself with energy vampires, they're just going to
Yeah,
suck the life out of you. So
right.
that's really, you know, good advice. You started Swogo at 21 with 4 co-founders, and eventually all 4 left and you ran it alone for 5 years. Walk me through that. What does the name mean? And did you fire them or did they quit? And what does it do to you emotionally when the people you started with are gone?
The name Swogo, I used to buy and sell domain names. And at the time, there was the whole NFC where you could like tap something,
And what is NFC?
near field communication. I think it's a lot of the things where you can like tap your phone against something, which what we use today, like contactless. So I saw that rising, and I thought Swogo could mean swipe and go. So I thought
Mm.
I'll buy it for that, and one day I'll trade it to somebody else if they want to do it. Then I was going to start a company, and I thought I want something that's short. This was a 5-letter .com domain. I thought that sounds pretty good. I'm just going to use that because that's what I have, and I've got no other ideas for a name to do. So, and it sounded friendly as well. So I was like, I'll use this. That's how the name originated. So there wasn't really much thought on it.
Got it.
I
And what was
can't
your
say I was a branding
what was
genius.
the business concept? And what did
The first one,
whose idea was it? And
yeah.
and how did these 4 co-founders come into play?
The business concept started when I was working in IT support. So I was working part time. And a lot of people would basically ask me questions about what laptop do I buy? Which phone do you recommend? And I realized there was no easy way for people to make that purchase decision, do the research quickly and find the right thing for them within their budget from the right store. So I wanted to create something that with 6 simple questions, we could get you that answer, starting with consumer electronics, which is what I knew most about, to expanding to like almost every single product vertical. Um, in order to do that, I realized I needed a CTO at the time. I had contracted one in the past, so I asked him if he would join me. And the other 3 were simply friends of mine from school. And I said to them, do you want to come and join me on this journey? I remember showing them like different exit multiples of other companies in the space and like what that looked like, which was like based on nothing. And I managed to convince them to come and join me. They came in with a lot less equity than I had, but yeah, that's how they came in.
And how much equity did they have versus you?
So 3 of them came in, I believe, around the 5% mark each. And then the
Okay.
CTO came in with 20%, I believe. And I kept the rest.
Got it. So you had control, but
Yeah.
what did that teach you? Because you basically had to blow that all up and go off on your own. So what did you learn from that?
Back then, like I'd never worked with really any of them properly before. So there was no real understanding of how we would work together, even if we were like great friends. So I think that's one thing. The second thing was that as the company was pivoting and also as the company was scaling, we required different skill sets. And I think it's people need to be comfortable with understanding that you might be good at one part, but in another part, either you're going to adapt and scale to that, or it's better for everybody to basically put somebody else in to take over that role and responsibility. Those are 2 learnings. I think obviously contractually as well. I didn't have any vesting periods or things like that, which, it's a common sense thing to do. But back then I had no idea what that was.
And did you have any legal agreement, any employment agreements, anything
We
like
had like
that when you
a
first started?
shareholders agreement because we raised a little bit of capital from a crowdfunding company, and then later on we raised some angel funding. So we had to have things somewhat in order.
And did you fire them or did they quit or how did that work?
So with 3 of them, so we went through a really dark time. So we lost a third of our revenue in 1 year. I remember looking ahead and thinking, this is not looking good. So like if we do this again for the next year, like we're really going to run out of money. We'd hired quite a bit as well. So we weren't in a very good place. I also, because they were my friends, I looked at it and I was kind of turning a blind eye to really what was happening. I guess I didn't really want to go directly to them like, hey, like this isn't working. I need to break this up. Even though I really truly knew that at least the year before.
How old are you at the time now when you realized, hey, this isn't working?
I would guess maybe 25, 26.
Okay.
We'd already pivoted a few times. We'd already started like scaling it a bit. So we got to that point and I remember saying to 3 of them, I said, look, either 3 of you leave or I will leave and I'll go start another company. Um, but if you leave, you can retain all of your equity, like as per the agreement. But I really want, and I can continue paying you until you go to find like another role and you move on into that. But the company needs to like move on. I actually gave them 24 hours to like make that decision. They decided that they would step aside and then I continued running it.
So you put something on the table for them. It seems like you treated them fairly. You had what Roger Fisher, one of the best negotiators, call botna. You already had an alternative, a plan B worked out, and you were pretty firm. Like it's okay if you want to do it, then you guys run the company. I'm taking off,
Yeah.
and you also did it at a time where things weren't going well. If you tried that, if the company was scaling and just
Yeah.
building,
We'd
it
have had a
may have
different
been a.
result if I did that.
How did you deal with it emotionally when they're gone, and how did you replace whatever it is that they were doing?
Yeah. So I would say emotionally, it was probably the hardest. One of them, for example, was my best friend at the time. We've been friends for many, many years. And I realized that almost no matter how I did it. So if you look at it from a paper standpoint or contractually, it's saying, look, retain all of your equity. You can go on and get a role that's paying you much more money than you're earning today because we were like very bootstrapped and not paying ourselves much. So financially, you'll be better off. However, the message that they really heard was, you're telling me that I'm not good enough. And I think that created a lot of tension. I also think back then, because I waited so long, I was just like, look, I need to get this done like right now. So I don't really have too much time for any emotion because I waited really to the last second. So by then I'd already moved from a 1-bedroom apartment into student accommodation, which I shouldn't have even been in. and then back home with my parents before I then did that. So I really let it really slide before I did that. That's a big learning and something I definitely don't do anymore. Yeah, so that I think the emotional part was hardest. In terms of the work side, I would say for around 6 months, it was really, really tough in terms of work-wise, like working like 7 days a week and really trying to push it. I was stretching my team that were left a lot more. So really kind of like burning the end of the candle. But we did manage to like to turn it around, and I could always see the light ahead as I was going through.
At that point, because you said you pivoted a few times,
Yeah.
what were you doing and how were you making money? Because it's not clear.
So the first version that we made, so you would log onto our website, swogo.com. You'd answer a series of 6 questions based on the product you were looking for, let's say a laptop. Once you got to the end of those 6 questions, we'd say, okay, these are the top 3 laptops for you. You can buy them at Best Buy, Walmart, et cetera, et cetera. When you were to click that and make the purchase, we'd earn a commission. So like an affiliate agreement.
Right.
That's how we started that business. We then pivoted that because we realized the marketing acquisition cost was way too high in order to make money doing this. So what I did is I said, we'll private label the technology and sell it directly to the retailer themselves. So if you were Best Buy, we would be your online sales assistant and make recommendations only from your product assortment. At the time, that was like a cool thing. Now probably like less so with AI. And the third pivot beyond that was we realized it wasn't so hard for the retailer to sell or interesting to sell the first product. What they really wanted to sell was the add-on items. That's where all of the profit margin was made. So for example, if you have an iPhone, maybe you make 5-10% gross margin. On your add-on, you can make 70-90%. So really they wanted to sell the case, the screen protector, the service, the Apple Care, those types of products. And there wasn't an easy way for them to do that online at the time. And that's what we helped them do.
At a certain point, you had to move to another country. You didn't have
Yeah.
a place to live for 6
Yeah.
months. Take me inside that period. What did it look like day to day, and why did you have to move? Were the police after you or something?
No, the police went after me. Maybe we had lawyers after we let people go, but
Yeah.
they were after us, but not the police. But what happened was we had a lot of the team out in Lisbon at the time. I had managed to hire a lot of people out in Lisbon initially with the idea that I was looking to find cheaper labor and do like arbitrage on it, basically. This was way before everybody else kind of got there and their golden visa programs and all that kind of stuff, and it inflated. What ended up happening is I was trying to lower my costs based compared to in London, which was really high. I'd literally hire an engineer and somebody would steal them from me like 2 months later. And I didn't
Right.
have the money to pay them more. So I was like, okay, I'll relocate. I then ended up building an office out there that my business partner at the time was running. And I didn't really like the way that things were being run there. So a lot of the challenges we had were based in that operation. So I had to relocate from London, which was the area I was running, over to Lisbon in order to basically arrange all of that.
And how long did you stay in Lisbon?
I ended up staying for, I think, maybe 4 years or 3 years, kind of a long, long time.
Wow. So, you know, you talked about these pivots. You went from B2C to B2B,
Yeah.
then you changed the product entirely. And then the second pivot came from that, I guess, a single conversation you had with the retailer that brought up the margins on the accessories
Yes.
being so much higher, 70% versus 5 to 10. How do you know the difference between a pivot that saves the company and one that kills it? How do you make sure, like, we're going to make another change, that this one's going to work?
I think getting someone to put their money where their mouth is. So the conversation I had with this retailer at the time, so I was selling them the online sales advisor that we created. He started explaining me the margins, and he asked me, when you get to the end of that recommendation, they've picked the laptop, can you recommend them add-on items? And I remember having the conversation. Yeah, this is on our roadmap, but I don't have it right now, and we didn't have anything. I hadn't thought about it. And then digging more into, I said, oh, hold on a second. Can you tell me like why? He explained the margins, and I said, okay. And how are you doing that currently today? And he said, oh, we'll manually associate one product to another one by one or SKU by SKU. I said, that sounds like incredibly inefficient. And he was like, it is. And I said, okay, how many products do you have? He said 50,000 items. And I said, you're doing this one by one for 50,000. That sounds like ludicrous. I'll never do this. And he was like, yes, but we just give up. So we don't do it on all our products. And I said, okay, hold on. So all of your money is, or your margin is made here, and you guys give up because it's too much work. Is that right? Yes. I said, let me solve that for you. If I could do that, and at the time, I think I told him, if you pay me 15,000, would you do it with me? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, done. And I thought, okay, you're talking to a kid on the other side of the table. You're a really, really large retailer and you're willing to just like go for it there and then on the spot. I just knew that it was going to be right. The signals were so strong. And in terms of like, did we have product market fit in terms of, did we really solve a problem for retailers? The answer was yes. And that we saw that as we got adoption from other retailers.
I imagine the technology was kind of already there. It's just another SKU, right? And in a company.
So we were very good at recommending the first product, but what we didn't have was like any database or any information on the add-on items. So let's say we'd done about a third of the work, but we quickly put together something like just for the laptop vertical. We had our MVP ready, and that worked.
Got it. So one of the things I find interesting is you never took venture capital. So you used equity crowdfunding on Cedars and you did like 6 rounds. I think you were only the seventh deal on the platform. I raised 5 million for a company called myprivates.com. Had commercials in San Francisco. We took off and then the SEC outlawed it. And Goldman had taken a company public called garage.com. There was another one. So I was kind of the third. But then the government stepped in and said, this is not legal. You can't do this. Now, of course, it is. But tell us how you ended up thinking, I'm going to do this thing on Cedars. And what is it? What's the platform? How much money did you end up raising through 6 rounds?
You know, like a lot of young entrepreneurs, especially back then, I immediately thought, okay, to do a company, I need money to start something. Now I don't think that's totally true, but anyway, that's what I thought the same time at that time. But I was like, I don't know anybody that can give me money. So how am I going to get hold of some money? I used to read like TechCrunch and go through every single article, try to absorb all the information out there. And the CEO of Cedars at the time, he was called Jeff Lynn. He posted an article. I'll be honest, I didn't even understand what he was talking about in the article, but I went to look at his company and I was like, okay, this equity crowdfunding thing, it was new. So like no one really understood what it was, especially me.
And what year was this, more or less?
I would guess maybe 2010, 2011.
Okay.
So it's like quite, like, I think you had like Kickstarter, but it wasn't, nobody exchanged anything for equity.
Right.
So I said to him, look, can I come work for you and be like an intern so I can learn what the hell this investment thing is all about? And he said, sure, come on in. So that's from a cold email. I went to meet him. He gave me the job.
That's pretty brilliant. So you're running your own company, but you went in to get a job as an intern?
Yeah. So back then I hadn't done it. So this was like just before I was preparing to launch it. And I explained to him, this is what I was looking to do. So I was very upfront and saying,
Right.
this is what I want to learn. This is what I want to do. And then he took me in. I think they were very small at the time. They were just like, okay, some labor. This guy looks like he's going to work. So we did that for some time. Then he had like, these angel mixers where you get all the angel investors together. And then I realized, oh, there's this thing called venture capital. And that's where there's a lot of money. And I was like, I need to get into this venture capital thing. So again, I was like reading articles online. I found this venture capitalist called Nick Brisbourne. At the time he was working for DFJ. I sent him a cold email and I said, I'd like to come work for you. And it's like the same thing again. He said, come on in. I got the job. And then I started like analyzing all the deal flow and start understanding more. Okay, this is what they're looking for. And I was like, okay, actually what I want is I'm going to raise some money on the equity crowdfunding platform because from the inside, I knew how it worked. So I knew if I could get to like, say, 30% funding and I could align that up first, all of the rest of it will automatically fill up itself. So all of these games, I kind of understood how I could like manipulate it to make sure I could close the round. So I thought this would be a very easy way to get that done. And then off the back of that, I got into an accelerator program, which led me to get access to angel investors. But the 6 rounds on Cedars is a bit misleading because it's kind of like, they had a pro rata engagement with their equity. So if I raised any further funding from angel investors, they would also have the option to pro rata, and some people would obviously exercise those rights.
And how much did you end up raising crowdfunding, more or less, in dollars?
A couple 100,000, like 250, 300, something like this.
Got it.
Yeah. And like probably all in all total funding, I would guess it was around like 500,000. It was pretty small.
You even seeded your own campaign anonymously to create momentum. Some people would call it genius. You use the word manipulation, but how do you see it?
Yeah. Well, I think it was maybe manipulation is a bad word. I would say it's more like I gamed the system. You could put money in anonymously, which I did. And I took the money that I earned over summer holidays working in IT support, and I started dripping the money into the campaign bit by bit anonymously. So it looked like the round would keep closing and there was always momentum. And so the round filled up really fast. And that's why in Europe, we were the seventh, I think it was the seventh equity crowdfunded company.
Two smart CEOs basically hire you as an intern. Your sales ability was probably your biggest advantage, but also a potential trap because you could sell products before you really had a product market fit. So, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs listening? And how do you guard against basically believing your own bullshit? You know?
Definitely that's like my core skill set and the thing that I've leveraged over and over again. And I think it's, for me, I think it's one of the best. You're always selling something, right? So whether that be to your employees, to your investors, to potential customers, I think it's a very good skill to have. And it's just about understanding people and their motivations. One of the things is you see a lot of entrepreneurs, they're quite delusional. I really don't think that I am. I'm like I believe I can do anything, but I think I'm also quite down to earth in the way that I will look at it. So for example, like in the way I pivoted the company from that one meeting. And the signal for me was really, you trusted a kid. I'm 35 now. I probably look in my 20s. When I was 21, I looked like 10. So you have a large retailer with billions in revenue that's like, I'll trust this kid to deliver this problem that's like supposedly one of the largest problems that they face, as their online channel was growing and growing. And I thought, like, if they're willing to trust me, like they really are desperate.
I mean, you're 21 years old. You did enterprise sales with old executives. How did you get them to trust you, especially if you looked like you were 10 years old?
The key thing that I believe is that you always need to do so much that you can't be ignored. So, for example, if somebody was let's say myself, when I was like cold emailing, I would do so much detail in that cold email. I would make, now with AI, obviously it's a bit different, but I would show the amount of effort that I put in that you would read it and go, I'm probably not very nice if I don't respond back to this kid. I would put it all the way to the end. He's put so much effort in. So let's say there was a friend of mine that was looking for a job. I won't name which company, but they were looking to get a marketing role and they were struggling on getting a job like when we were students. And I said, I'm sure I can help you get that job. I put together a full marketing plan for her. And I said, send this, forget HR, go directly to like the CMO, attach this, explain X, Y, and Z, send it. You're going to get an interview. There's no way that you won't get an interview. And it's just like you wrote like 20 pages for somebody. You showed them the things that they could change. There's screenshots everywhere. You've gone in the store, say, this is how you've done X, Y, and Z. It's not nice to not respond, right? And I think if you make that much effort, people will take notice. And I think one of the things that we have, especially in technology, is looking young. You can kind of have like a little bit of a halo effect that somebody can look at you, they put this much effort in. I think this guy might go places. And every now and then there's these kids that sometimes they make it. And maybe this could be one of them. And we're in the business of placing bets. So let's give him a go. So I would kind of play into that.
I like that. I learned early on that if you it's all about value. So if you can give someone 3x the value, they're going to believe in you. I just launched a Substack in October and I decided to write basically 5 times a week and give it away for free for like 4 months. I wrote 108 articles before going to paid.
Yeah.
And now this week I'm #1 finance Substack bestseller. I worked hard. I gave it away. Now I'm not young anymore, but it's the same strategy. I think you're probably too young, but to know, but there was the most successful fundraisers of all time were the Hare Krishnas. They would meet people at an airport and they'd give them a rose and ask for something. And like, you got a rose. So you felt compelled and you would then give them money. And then you would throw the rose in a garbage, get on your plane, and they would go grab all the roses out and keep
And do it
giving them
again.
away. But you described a strategy I had read where instead of giving a target customer a free pilot, you'd give their competitor the free trial and then use that to create urgency. Explain what you actually did and where did you get that idea from?
I think the fact that I looked so young and I was doing enterprise sales, I always felt like I had a disadvantage. Once I talked to like I think it was like a sales advisor or a consultant, and we just had a random chat. And he just said to me, "I've got one advice for you, kid. Cut your hair." That was it. So I was like, I went and cut my hair. So it's like, so that's what I did. But the whole time I was thinking, okay, how can I, before I get into the room, before I get into the conversation, make sure that they're already willing to like hear me? And at the beginning that I'm showing them the credibility that I have, that, and I've done the work, that you cannot possibly ignore me. It would be silly to not pay attention. And I think I just applied this to absolutely everything. So even on my sales calls at the beginning, while people be waiting on Zoom, I would showcase all the logos that I would have always there waiting. So I would already be establishing credibility before I'd even opened my mouth. And I would do this all the time. I would say that strategy that I employed, I realized that retailers were conglomerates. So if you landed one, a lot of the times, if you were smart enough about who you targeted, you could sell to all of the other countries, and then they'd have competitors in each of those countries. And you could use that to basically scale across, because the business is so competitive. So they always pay attention to what their competitors are doing. So once I started understanding that dynamic, I would say, okay, I've got a target customer. Let's say in the UK, for example, you can have Sainsbury's and Tesco, like two large grocery stores. If I wanted Tesco, I would go to Sainsbury's, offer them a free trial, low friction, and then immediately go to Tesco and say, hey, we've actually partnered with Sainsbury's, check this out. And I would basically sacrifice Sainsbury's to a degree to basically make sure that Tesco would pay. I'd get a long-term contract there and look to scale off the back of that. And ideally, the way I would do it is I'd make sure that the other player had a lot of sister companies and subsidiaries that I could also sell into. So I'd sacrifice one. It's like playing chess. You sacrifice one of your pieces in order to then go and clean up the board. I would basically do this.
The free offering, you would get in there and design enough of everything to understand how it worked. And I'm sure you were
Yeah.
doing research at the same time of the competitor that you actually wanted to get into.
A lot of research. So before I went in and acted on doing our outbound strategy, I would map out everything that I wanted. I used to say that we would turn the world Swogo blue. So I really wanted to work out how we could do this. And the conglomerates and the competitions and like leveraging one against each other was the most effective way of doing it. It created pressure, like, which I think one of the hardest things people struggle to do is answer the question, why now? And that was one of the ways that we did it.
I've worked with conglomerates, and the hardest part is getting, well, first finding out who the decision maker is.
Yeah.
And then how did you get to them also?
Nowadays, obviously through LinkedIn and things like that, it's not so difficult to find the right person, especially once you start learning and you start identifying your ideal customer profile, you can like really narrow that in. That's one thing. In terms of getting their attention, what I believe in doing is the opposite of everybody else. So if you're trying to get someone's attention, don't do the same thing as everyone else. That's way too competitive. So for example, there was a retailer in the UK. They're called John Lewis. They're like a fancy department store, or like
Okay.
middle upper class department store. But they're one that if you were to get in the UK, it's so highly regarded. They have like incredible service. Like the whole population loves them. So if you got them, everybody else will follow. It's like the British company. So like everybody wants that one. And so what I did is I remember reading on Twitter at the time, there was a guy there and he supported Tottenham Hotspur, the football team. I know nothing at all about football or soccer, like absolutely zero. And I was just, all right, let me research about this team. So I started like reading about it. Oh, there's a new season. That meant there was a new kit that came out. So I was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do loads of research on his website. I print screen things. And I direct mailed it with a t-shirt that had been printed of the club with my company name on the back, the number one. And I did it in a baby size, like really small that he couldn't use it. And I said, I have one with your name, your size. Let's meet. And this is the research I've done all on you. And that landed the meeting straight away.
Wow. And you knew exactly who to go to. And was this an email or a call?
This was a letter, direct mail.
Why a letter, not email? Same to be different?
To be different. I did a lot of email. I can tell you, to close Walmart, I did 727 emails to get it. So it's quite persistent.
Tell us about that, because I know Walmart well, and
Yes.
they're not one company. They're like 200
No.
different companies. They usually make you have an office in
Yeah.
Bentonville if you want to do business with them. So that's pretty persistent. Tell us what you did and what didn't work and what worked to get into Walmart.
I tried a lot of different things. The one that came to mind that was like creative, there's an industry event called Shop Talk. They typically run that in Las Vegas, like every January, like next to CES. And a lot of the top retailers go there. What I would do is I would create these little booklets that had research directly on their websites. It was a custom booklet for every single person that was speaking on stage that was my ideal customer profile. And on the front cover of that booklet, I would put their face on it. I would then wait at the end when they'd finished their talk. Everybody would be standing there in a line with their business card and wanted to exchange their business card. What I exchanged was a booklet with their face on it. I can tell you mine stood out versus everybody else's. And I kind of played the fact that I was young as well to go in and just be like, I can be a little bit more cheeky and try and get this and get their attention. So that's one thing I did with Walmart. That led me to have some initial discussions, but then it died down. I did replicate that strategy a lot to get other retailers as well. But that was one of the things that I did. The one that really started working was there was an executive that had been relocated over to Brazil from Bentonville to open their operations out there. He stayed there for many, many years. And then what happened was he relocated back to Bentonville. And I was like, okay, this is usually like a really good sign. They obviously trust him to go there and then he returns back. So he's done it for the business and he's put the business first. So I was like, this is a good guy. This is a good exec that I want to target and he'll likely have more influence than other people. I researched about Brazil. They had these beers and I basically sent him so much beer to his office. That was Brazilian beer, a lot of it. And there's actually like a anti-terrorism department or something like this that crushed all my beer. And he received a notification to say, a package arrived for you from this guy and we had to crush it. When I sent him an email, he at least replied. He wasn't expecting that. So it gave me the opportunity actually to speak with him because it was just something so different.
And what did you sell to him?
So he didn't end up buying that time. So it was another time later on that they ended up buying just through more natural ways. And they ended up buying our cross-selling technology. So basically helping them cross-sell items with one another so they can increase their margin and their average order value.
And for people trying to break into enterprise sales, what's the single most important thing that they get wrong?
You're not selling, you're helping somebody buy. And you need to do what's best for them.
Being 12 years old and thinking of this whole different frame, you're helping somebody buy, you're not selling them anything. How does that change the way that you view it and approach it?
I think it's really trying to put yourself always in their shoes. So they're looking, okay, how can I protect my job? How can I make sure I'm getting my goals done? How can I make sure that my team's goals are getting hit? Maybe does that lead for myself to get a bonus or a promotion? You really want to try and understand that and say, I want to help you actually to do this. Let's work together. That's one thing that I found. I think the other thing that I found to be very, very important that people don't do so well is getting a very clear decision-making process. Most people think that just simply asking for the next step is good enough. And what I believe that you need to do is fully map it out all the way to the very end where the contract is signed.
Walk us through what that actually means.
Let's say I'm having a first call with a prospect. I'm understanding from them, okay, the challenges they have, how they're currently cross-selling, what they're struggling, what their KPIs are. I'm getting all of that information. I'm perhaps giving a demo on our product. I also want to understand, who do they want to speak with? How are we going to get this integrated? Who would approve this? What does that typically look like? When I give you a proposal, who's going to be reviewing that? How does the CFO look at that and say that, this passes the test? What type of things have you gotten through before? Like, can I trust that you've done this before and we can help navigate this together? Or is it your first rodeo? And then if you're going to go from there, we've got all of these things approved. Now, how are we going to get to the legal team? Do you have to go for procurement? How many people do they go for? What's their criteria? Okay, once we've done all that, then we sign. Okay, great. And who would be that signature? Okay, and then we'd start working together. Yes, great. So I would go all the way into the very end. It showed that I was experienced at doing it. I knew how to navigate. I would ask them what the typical challenges were. Where do you typically have friction? How can I help do this? Who's done that well? Doing it in that way and say, okay, you're going to be talking to this person. So how can I help you in that conversation? And genuinely aiding them to do that. That's what allowed sales to facilitate. I believe if you remove friction as much as possible, you'll sell much more.
You're right. Jonah Berger, one of my favorite authors, marketing professor at Wharton, wrote a book was How to Eliminate Friction. And to get decisions, you got to eliminate friction. You were looking for all the friction spots, asking all the right questions. Now, what happened if you got red flags, like they'd never done it before, or they had a lot of challenges, or like, what would you do then? Would you just say, hey, it's not worth my time because it's the wrong person? Or
It depended on who it was, what their title was, and also the way I would gauge what they were looking to do. You could get a sense if somebody was kind of like, okay, I really want to drive this one forward, or not really, I'm going to play it safe. You could sense that. And I think that bit's, I guess, less structured. You have to kind of like feel it. So I think it would depend on a lot of different factors, really, if I would decide to go ahead or not. But what I would do is I would typically ask myself from a framework of, what's the likelihood that this will work? And I do this for actually most of my decisions when I make, it's a framework I use. Is it a 10% probability, 50 or 90%? If I'm not sure, so if I believe it's 60, I would put it down to 50. So I always go down to the lower number. And then I ask myself, okay, if I'm to take another option, what's the probability, 10, 50 or 90? And whichever one I believe has the highest probability, I will then take that option and be happy that if it blew up and it didn't work out, that's okay, because it's a game of probability. You don't close every deal that you do, but you do this enough times and you'll be winning overall.
when you're mentoring young people or, giving advice to our listeners, what are some books or resources that you would recommend to them that helped you, become successful, have a growth mindset? What kind of stands out for you?
I look at acquiring knowledge in a few ways. So podcasts for me are ways that I get a lot of information, surround myself with things that perhaps I wasn't expecting. It's not like intentional for me. So it's like
Right.
I'm using it to just acquire information and learn about different things that perhaps I wasn't proactively searching for. And then I use books typically where I'm like, okay, there's this very specific thing that I'm looking to resolve. I read that book. Within some hours, I've basically got 10 years of knowledge. And maybe I'll do like a couple of them in the same topic, which I can read all over in a weekend. And by Monday, I can already start implementing it. So that's kind of the way that I approach it. There was one book called Pitch Anything.
Huh.
I quite liked this book. At the time, it was good for me more about the mindset and when you're going out to raise capital, to really explain to me. I think the thing that I internalized was there's a lot of dollars out there, but there's only one of you. And so a lot of the times, especially I think when people are starting out, they believe that the investor has the upper hand. And I think when I saw that at 21, I thought, okay, this is quite good for me because it makes me, no, I think I can genuinely do this and I'm going to make the pick. So I remember on the accelerator program, at the end, we had 35 investors that wanted to invest. And I picked 5. And I remember telling them like, we've got 24 hours to make a decision or the train is going to depart. And I had no confidence or no reason to like say this, but I would say it and it worked. And the FOMO that we would have, I remember one of our angel investors, the one that decided to get a boat and call it Swogo when we exited, he said to me, he saw like a sparkle in my eye. And when he asked me, what happens if you fail? I replied, I will never fail. And I replied so quickly. I was young and I was a bit fiery and I was like, that's not happening. Like, not at all. I'm not starting this to fail. And as soon as he said that, he goes, I'm in straight away. And then it started snowballing from there.
I was with a friend of mine the other day, Charlie Engel, who's like the first human to run the Sahara Desert, 111 miles, running 2 marathons a day in 140-degree heat. And he
Yeah.
convinced not one, not two, but 3 Academy Award winners to get behind the documentary. And he'll tell you it's the stupidest idea in the world. No one had done it. He was probably going to die, but he had so much passion that he said, people can see it. They
It's
can,
contagious.
yeah. And he came in late to the meeting. He was sweating. He got lost. He only had like 30 minutes, but it worked. And he got Matt Damon to become the executive producer, to
Wow.
narrate it. The Academy Award winner called him and said, hey, Charlie, I was talking to Matt Damon and he kind of wants to be behind the project. What do you think of that? And like in a deadpan, he said, well, I was really thinking about somebody better, but I guess I guess if you recommend them, we could go with Matt. It's like, I mean,
Will
that's
do.
pretty ballsy, but it was like that confidence that you have, and it works. People don't realize, and also you have to ask for the sale. If you're a politician, you have to ask for the vote. I screwed that up on. I told you I launched this Substack, and I wrote 108 of them for free, and it wasn't till I got to like 100 that I realized that I wasn't asking the readers to do anything. I put a call to action. Hey, if you've gotten something out of this, would you mind liking it, restacking it, which is like retweeting,
Mhm.
and commenting below and sharing it. And guess
And
what?
then
All of a sudden,
yeah,
like 300 people would do it because I asked. And I'm like,
yeah.
it's
And
like
you're
I
like, is that it?
wasted.
The amount of effort you made to do that versus writing 108 is just like nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, it's like when you ask people, and yeah, look, if I read something and I like it and I got value of it, of course I'm gonna share it. But if you don't ask, nothing happens. So
Yeah.
why was it that you were growing 80% year over year during COVID? What happened?
Even at some point towards the end, we were going like 140%. It started like
Wow.
it really, really started like going for it. So our business model was that we would earn a commission on the add-on items that we would sell. So let's say if you were shopping on a retailer site, you're looking at an iPhone, you buy a case, we would earn a commission on the case. Because consumer electronics was like my area of interest, still the majority of our revenue took place from consumer electronics.
Right.
And as you can imagine, everybody was like working from home. People spent a lot on that category. So that's really where we saw explosive growth coming in. You were buying second screens to work from home. You were buying new laptops, new TVs, like maybe like game consoles that maybe you weren't engaging with for a long time, but now you're going to invest in it. So we saw a lot of those purchases being brought forwards, and that really helped a lot with our revenue. Surprisingly, our second largest category was beauty, and people were buying a lot of products for beauty still online. Which that one, to be honest, that took me by surprise because I don't know where you're going, but I guess it was for Zoom. That's basically what we saw. So explosive growth off the back of that. We also, at the time, got access to loans at a much cheaper rate. So interest rates were super low. We went and took on as much as we could. I think that was about 500,000. And then we reinvested that money like straight away.
And what were your revenues at the time, like during the COVID years?
We would probably like at the end about 3-4 million.
You said you were growing 140% a year, but you made the decision to take the chips off the table. Tell me the tension between, hey, this is working amazing, 140% growth, and this is the moment we got to leave.
There were a few factors at play. So one, my co-founders were still on the cap table. Two, another thing that I realized was that because we were selling add-on items, they were small in value. So you were earning a very small commission every single time on these items. So my annual contract values weren't large enough. For the amount of effort we were making on sales and the brands that we worked with, we should have been making many, many, many tens of millions in revenue. So I feel like we did the work for that, but we didn't manage to capture enough of the value for it for ourselves. So that was another thing. So I knew that in order to scale this beyond that, I would need to start introducing more products into my line and building a platform. And really, in order for me to do this in a good way, I would probably need to raise VC capital, like have more money to basically enable me to do this. The third thing that I noticed, I'm not like an expert in retail. So what I would always do is I would read the annual reports, the quarterly earnings, all of that stuff around each of the major retailers of the categories that we were operating in. And I was reading the Best Buy report, and that said, or on one of their webinars, it said,
Right.
a lot of the purchases have been brought forwards in consumer electronics. And because nothing's really being produced, we don't have a lot of new products and new releases coming out. So there's not much reason for people to buy more. So we should be careful. It was something along those lines.
Right.
And I thought, that's not good for me. But at the same time, GfK, Forrester, and a lot of those companies were saying e-commerce habits have changed forever and it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. And that trajectory is not going to stop. So I looked at that and I thought, hold on, that's like some asymmetric information here. It's everybody's saying it's growing, but when you really look into the weeds of what we have, the way that our business model is functioning, that we were able to ride that growth, it will work against us later on. So now is the perfect time to sell. And that's why we did that.
call that, I guess, information asymmetry. So,
Mhm.
how much of a successful exit is about knowing something the buyer, doesn't, and how did you organize the process to sell? Because you had been successful doing the venture capital, but selling is a whole different thing. Obviously, you got VC partners also. So, how did you manage that process to be successful?
We had some VC partners that invested in our company, but only as individuals. So we didn't raise any venture capital at all. Basically, the way I managed that process, so I initially started doing some outreach to people that I thought potentially could buy the company. And I started doing this way before. So I'm a believer in already starting to make those relationships first.
And were these strategics?
Yes. So I would make sure that I would just be on their radar and just be like, hey, just to let you know, we've been growing like 80% or 140%. Our net retention, I think, was like 110%. Things were going like quite well. And we're expanding. We want to also like break in, like putting like men on the ground inside the US as well, et cetera, et cetera. Like we should connect. There was like a message like this to that extent. I ended up getting a lot of different meetings on it. People would just have a chat with me. Naturally, you'd start seeing people going, maybe this could be like an acquisition that we could take. Immediately then, I'd already spoken to several different bankers. So I had those already lined up beforehand,
And did you target European companies or were you targeting global?
mainly US.
Okay.
Because they'll typically pay like more. So I was like, I'm gonna start out there, and I thought that we
Right.
could add value to them in that the European market was so fragmented, but we did so well in doing that, we could save them a lot of time in doing it. And they would have the US clients that we could then go into and sell across all of those, and that would be a lot easier for us.
Right.
Yes, that was the kind of the logic that we had there. I already spoke to these different, like a few different bankers beforehand, so I kind of got to like vet them and talk to them over probably like a 6 to 9 month timeline, see what they're like, how much time would they give me, would they engage, would they give me good advice before even putting them on a retainer.
And did you talk to them by Zoom or did you meet them personally or a combination of both?
It was Zoom at the time. It was like kind of like COVID times. It was Zoom. I already knew who I wanted to work with, and then as soon as I got some interest, got one saying they wanted to like place an offer, I immediately engaged the banker, and then we started the process off the back of that.
Getting the right banker, and I was a investment
Mhm.
banker, so and I had a company that helped raise money, sell
Yeah.
companies. How did you ultimately make the call between all the different people? Who was the banker and what
Mhm.
quality did you see they had? And I'm sure you were looking for like, the green apple amongst a thousand red apples. You were looking
Mhm.
for somebody different. Why was this person different? Why did you pick them?
There was a couple of reasons. So one of my investors had used them before, and he sold several of his portfolio companies, so he had a
Okay.
track record. The second thing is that a particular banker that was working there, he'd personally sold a retail software company as well. So he was an entrepreneur, and I noticed that he would give me like really good guidance on what to do. So I was like, he could strategically look at the market. And what I found was that a lot of the other bankers I would speak with, it would just be like looking at your spreadsheet, looking at like the multiples it could be. And I was like, that's not how you're going to maximize the most value, because the value is not what a $4 or $5 million company is doing. The value is all in the synergy that it could create and the value off the back of it for the new entity that's buying you. And so I needed somebody that could really understand that. And that's why I decided to go that route. And it paid off. Like now the guy sold like many of my friends' companies as well. So it's one that I stay very close with.
Now you had said he wasn't a traditional like finance guy. What does that mean?
He was an exited entrepreneur. And so I think also like really understanding what I want for my business, that it's also looked after well, that you can understand the synergy, where there's opportunity, how to get hold of the right person, those kind of things. That I think that's what he really, really focused on. And I saw this where even at the very end of the process, we had two companies bidding for it at the end.
Right.
They were doing like rounds of bids, and then one dropped off. There was only one left. And we still pushed that person for more. And they ended up ultimately buying us. Whereas, like, normally I would say at that point, you say, listen, you've got one left. Now's a good time to just secure this, lock the bag, and let's walk away, because I want to bank my commission. So let's not play with fire. And he pushed a bit more. And we ended up with a bit more, and then we sold out. We were aligned, basically. More morally, not necessarily like the business model as well, but morally we were aligned.
So one of the most common and I think least discussed problems in startups is having co-founders still on the cap table who were no longer working in the business. How did that affect your exit? And what would you tell founders who are dealing with that problem right now?
Oh, so my paperwork was not good at the time. So yeah, you have those like drag along rights. So actually it was put together incorrectly that said I needed to have 100% of shareholders to say yes. That was not good.
Oh my God. Explain what drag along rights mean and why they're so important.
Basically, it's a clause that says as long as you get above a certain amount of your shareholders saying yes, then everybody will be dragged along who even said no for the company to be sold. Um, Mine wasn't worded correctly, so it basically was invalid, and you would need 100% of shareholders to say yes. So even if one with a few percent equity said, no, I don't want to sell, the whole deal would fall apart because I had tension with my previous co founders that made it a lot harder. And I do recall actually one of my angel investors, his wife was in hospital at the time. And we were like closing the deal. And I remember calling him and I said, like, I really need you to sign this. It's just you to go. He's like, I'm in the hospital with my wife. And I'm like, I'm really sorry to ask you, but I really need you to do it. And this was at the time when Putin was declaring war on Ukraine. And I was thinking, oh, this can go really south and like really screw the deal now. So I had to really put pressure on him at that moment in time, which was like sensitive for him to. So yeah, it wasn't a good time.
Yeah, no, and I've had founders stuck in a situation with really bad people they had to fire, and they were not good people. Now they could basically
Yeah.
bribe them to give them X, give them this, give us, more equity, et cetera.
I've heard of a founder that raised some capital and basically they were going to sell it for less than they raised it for. So they weren't going to end up with any money. And they said, look, we'll just close the whole company down unless you give me a couple $1 million first. So they basically like held them hostage against the agreement that they had. And they ended up actually going along with it and paying them out. So
To me, having a great lawyer, and I'm a lawyer, so I got lucky because I met the guy that's been my lawyer on the first day of law school, and he was an investment banker for 3 years at a
that's
big,
good.
big firm before he went to law school. So
Mhm. Very good.
he was a deal guy, he was an entrepreneur. Um, but if you have the wrong advisor, and you don't have the right legal documents, you could be really screwed.
Yeah. I
Um,
ended up adopting legal agreements through an accelerator program. So I ended up just taking on theirs, assuming that that would be okay. And, it's kind of like everybody has the same. So that's great. But everybody had the same incorrect clause. So that wasn't good. So now I would never do that.
right, right. So when you sold your company, you had an investor that told you don't spend any money for 6 months, and you followed that advice, I guess. But then a year and a half later, you bought a McLaren. So tell me about the psychology of delayed gratification when you've spent a decade, grinding and grinding and grinding towards a number.
I didn't really pay myself much money throughout the process of building my last business. Like every
Right,
dollar I just kept reinvesting back for a whole 10 years. It's not to say like towards the end I led a difficult life. I didn't. I paid myself enough that I needed, but not for any like
right.
luxuries. Off the back of this, like one of my investors said to me, the best thing you can do is simply not spend any money for 6 months. Lock it away. I put that into a savings account. Interest rates are quite high at the time, and maybe like 5.5 or something I can't remember around that time. It's like that's actually pretty good. Locked it away and wouldn't touch it. I was then making like an executive salary. I was on like the board of on the exact team of One World Sync, the company that bought mine. I was getting paid like decent money. And I was just, to be honest, I was just spending that money. So I was still getting like something out of my system, like enjoying it and feeling like I'm doing things that I couldn't have done before. But I wasn't touching any of the money that I actually worked really hard to get. And I also found that a lot of people were coming, trying to like, quote unquote advisors and things like that, wanting to like help manage my wealth and these kind of things. And I was in a vulnerable place and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I was also quite excited. So that's not a good time to be able to like make decisions. And I figured I was 31 at the time. I'm very young. I've got a long horizon to go. This can really compound over time. I just need to not do anything stupid. So I went along with that advice and I thought, if I've waited 10 years already, I think I can do like 10 and a half. It's not that big of a deal. So I think delayed gratification is something that I've always been, it's been trained for such a long time that for me, I can do it.
So you're very goal oriented since, you were 12 years old, you were setting goals and doing things and you wanted to become a millionaire by age 30. You missed it by, I guess, a year,
Yeah, I'm gonna rub it in.
but you finally did it. And how important is having a goal that's very specific and you're thinking about it all the time?
So my feeling is this, is that as humans, we're built to evolve. As simple as that. Evolution. And that can be at anything. That can be with our health, which is something I really focus on a lot today. That could be with my business. We could be with friends. It can be with family. We want to see progress in things. I don't think it's a problem to necessarily want more of something and want to see improvement. I think that's actually very human about us. So I like to embrace that and always like kind of have something that I'm working towards, but it doesn't have to be extreme. Having like something that, you want to do that makes you get up in the morning, that you're excited about. I think for me, the excitement is progress.
You said that one of the thing that you see entrepreneurs, they don't really ask themselves what they personally want. What would you tell a founder that's like 5 years into building their company and has never asked themselves the question of what they really want? And what lesson did you learn from it?
I'd say the good news is you found out 5 years earlier than I did that you need to ask yourself that question, first of all. Let's say, for example, for me in business, like I I like hiring and working with people that I really enjoy spending time with, that are good
Okay.
at what they're doing, that share my common goal, my ambition of what to create, and the same values. I love doing that. And so I realized that like business can be a vehicle for dreams, even hanging out with like great people that you want to do, like working with certain people, like in my business, like helping entrepreneurs and execs to like be healthy and enjoy and maximize life. That now gives me a kick. I enjoy doing that. Um, and so I think there's many different things that it can do. Like, let's say, for example, in this business, one of the things that was important to me is that I wouldn't be tied to a specific location. So
Right.
we do a lot of like online coaching. We do travel for work, but I don't have to be necessarily in a specific location. And that was a kind of a condition for me. I wouldn't want to do like a lot of physical locations that I had to physically be present, because that will take away some of the freedom that is important to me today.
And tell me about Daily Body Coach. You made your money and
Yeah.
now I guess you got bored and said, I too young to quit, so I got to build another company. How did Daily Body Coach come about? What's the business model? How are you scaling it? What are you doing different this time?
The first thing that I did is I looked at a concept called ikigai. I
Okay.
wanted to find something that really meant something to me. And I found like who are like my tribe, the people I like being with. They're people that like to work for something. They're people that maybe sacrifice, like the entrepreneurs and the executives that are doing that. I really, really like those people and I'm drawn to them. So I was like, I want to focus there.
And do you have a Japanese background at all because of that
No,
background?
my mum's from Macau. My
Okay.
father's from Portugal.
Got it. Okay.
But I heard about it in a podcast and I was like, that's what I need. So I went and had to look at that. The second thing I thought is, where do I spend the majority of my time outside of work, like running my last company? Where was I spending my time? It was on my health. It was like looking after myself, because I really believe that health is the foundation. So that led me to thinking, how can I help this ideal customer profile? And especially when the ideal customer profile really is me. It's somebody that is like, either they're traveling for work or they're traveling for pleasure. They want to go to restaurants. They want to have fun. They want to spend time with their loved ones. But they want to maximize the enjoyment of life, and understand that that's the foundation. And without that, you really don't have much. I thought, what's the point in having money if I don't have my health in order? So I thought all those things combined, that's why I'm going to start Daily Body Coach. I did it at first as like a lifestyle business. I thought like this will be fun. I'm going to engage with people. I'm going to help people. And now it's really, really like taking off, and it's no longer a lifestyle business. I'm like full in with it. I've just hired like my previous CTO from my last company that's come and joined 2 weeks ago. And we're really going out and scaling this business. This is going to be the biggest one yet, for sure.
Are you using your own money? Are you raising money? What are you
Uh,
doing?
All self-funded. And the
Good.
company, it's been doing it for now like 2 years. The company's profitable. Um, so yeah, it's running on its own now.
Great. And we never talked about your love life, your sister, your parents. What did your parents think of your success and who are you sharing your life with now?
With my parents. So I think they're very proud of like basic what I've been able to do. My mother and I, we don't speak anymore. My sister as well, we don't speak anymore. Not since after exit, but like prior, we hadn't been speaking for quite some time. But my father and I are really close. My mum and dad are no longer together as well. So
I know we talked about not having energy vampires in your life and
yeah,
stuff like that, but and the hardest thing is removing energy vampires that are family. But what happened, if you can share?
the craziest thing is I think I was so stubborn many, many years ago that I didn't truly understand. I don't even really recall what happened. But I have this thing where this goes like very deep. It's like, and I spoke to a therapist about this before, and it was one of the things that I have the ability to do is when something isn't going well, I can carve it out, and it's almost like I ignore it and bucket it to the side, and then I continue. And that's actually one of the skills, if you want to call it that, I used in running my last business. When things were not going well, I could take it, bucket it, and seemingly look like nothing happened and just plow forward. I think I've internalized that so much to myself that I've done this where I can barely actually remember what's actually happened. You see a lot of this happen. They say with like people that are like kind of traumatized. They exhibit a lot of this behavior, but that's something that I've done and something that I'd like to work on.
And do you have a
Yeah.
girlfriend? Are you married? Are you single? What's going on with you?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I have a girlfriend.
Got it. What do you think about being, a father in the future? Is that something in the cards for you?
It's definitely something I'd like to be in the future. I'd love to be a father. Yeah.
Good for you, because obviously you've learned a lot of different lessons. And I want to ask, like, for budding or young entrepreneurs watching this, what are the lessons, like top two or three lessons that you would give them that you learned the hard way? Obviously, you already talked about making sure your legal agreements are set. You picked partners that were friends, but they didn't have the skill sets to really help you grow. So, being careful around that. You talked about a lot of different sales techniques, how to raise money, but what are kind of like some big lessons that you would say if you were teaching a school of entrepreneurship?
I would say one, decide the life that you want to live and what you're looking to get out of it as clearly as possible. And if you have partners, ask them also what they are looking to do too. And if they don't know, try and flesh it out together so you can get on the same page of what you want to do. Because otherwise, those things can kind of come through the cracks later. And I think being open with that as you go through the journey, as obviously things will change over like a decade running a company, that would be really, really helpful. The second thing I would say is when you don't know something, try and find somebody that's done it before, and you can really shortcut your opportunity to learning. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, if I look at myself, for example, the way I went to go to learn about raising capital, I did an internship at an equity crowdfunding platform. And I found that, oh, that's not where they've got money. Then I went to like a VC firm and realized, oh, actually, I don't want VC. What I want is
Right.
angel investors. So I went to everywhere but the place that I wanted. Through the process of elimination, I got to the answer that I wanted. In reality, like going to somebody that's already done it many times, I could have easily got this answer. And I would have wasted like 1 year trying to do that. Even though there were things that I learned and things like that, it wasn't an efficient path to acquire the knowledge that I needed. So I would say you can save a lot of time by simply doing that. And there are many ways, even when scaling your company, if you get a consultant to do something specific that you want, they've done it before, you say, look, help me do this, get me 80% of the way there very quickly, and then you move on and doing it yourself. I think that's something that also can work.
We never talked about this, but did you go to university or no?
Did, yeah. I studied economics at university, but I can tell you my attendance was about 5%. So while I did finish, I wouldn't say that I was like the best student.
With AI, you could have the best teachers in the world, learn anything
Yeah.
that you want. If you had to do it all over again, would you go to university? What'd you get out of it? Or would you now tell kids?
So my parents, neither of them finished university. They didn't go to university. I was the first one to basically go. For my mum being like Asian, this was like a position of pride and something that she really,
Tiger
really, really
mom.
wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was no opportunity to not go. And I remember being like, I don't want to go. I already know exactly what I wanted to do since I was 12 years old. And I've been forced to go through this education system when I know what I want to do. And I thought, I think I can do this game. I already kind of know what I'm kind of know what I'm doing, at least enough. So the reality of I didn't really like go much. I was always like tinkering with different businesses, like working over here, trying to learn different things. So I didn't really use it to learn much, to be honest. But I wouldn't say that's what I would advise for everybody. Um, but for me, it worked well, and I only did it pretty much to like make sure that my mum was happy. That was it.
Right. And you talked about podcasts and going to
Yeah.
like, are there like go-to podcasts that you like to listen to that have helped you out?
I've listened a lot to this podcast called My First Million. It's a terrible name. It's not really exactly what the show is about, but it has a lot of like different business ideas. They're two exited entrepreneurs that talk about different businesses. They analyze them where there's new opportunities. They bring on great guests, and it's extremely practical things, which I really, really like. So I've listened to probably every single episode that they've done since the show first started. I went through all their back catalog. I'm a big fan of that show.
Got it. And then, after the pandemic, after I guess you sold your company, is really when AI started to come out and
Yeah.
scale. How have you leveraged AI in your own personal life or business now?
So I've just hired my previous CTO 2 weeks ago because we're going to start leveraging it a lot more to like improve the customer experience of what we give to our clients. So one of the things that we've noticed and we specialize a lot in a daily body coach is being able to adapt everything to the person's environment. So like most companies, they're kind of selling you what's plan A? What's the best protocol for me to do? The reality of it is, if I told you Arnold Schwarzenegger's plan to building muscle was the best in the world, it doesn't mean that's what you're going to do. That doesn't fit your lifestyle and what maybe your goals are. So it's really about what's the optimal plan for the individual, their lifestyle, what they want, and how can we avoid them going to plan F, i.e., you're doing everything so well Monday to Friday, and on the weekend, kaboom, for example. It's that tinkering of plan F that makes all of the difference. And what we want to do is basically like connect to people's calendars, understand everything they've got going on in their life, and then adapt everything for them. So it's like, imagine you're going to a hotel. I don't have as much time to train as normal. No problem. We're adjusting that down now to be 20-minute session to fit in your schedule. Get it done. Let's go. So adapting everything to what you've got coming up within your lifestyle. Today we do this very manually. We'll ask what are you doing next week and adapt
Right.
everything. But there's a lot of this that we can automate and make a lot more efficient and even be more proactive about it. So that's one of the ways that we're going to be leveraging it. Another way that we're going to be leveraging it in this scenario is we want to be able to predict behaviors. So for example, what I want to do is mainly predict when you're going to go to plan F and go off track before you're going to do it, and analyzing those patterns of human behavior and intercepting them before they actually happen so we can keep you on course. Doesn't mean that you have to go from plan F to A, but even tell you, let's do B and C based on how you feel, and then let's move on. And if you continuously make progress over time, that's what helps, not getting set back. So that's one of the ways that we want to use it.
If a listener is interested in your product or being a client, like what is your ideal client? How do they reach you? And what should they be thinking about if they wanted to engage your services or your company
Yeah.
services?
So our ideal client is somebody that has probably tried to do something before and they've realized that, you know, what actually works is something sustainable. Most people, they always prefer to click get rich quick, but that doesn't work, right? So everyone's tried to do like, I'm going to diet for like 90 days. And then like day 91 comes and that's all gone out the window. And we always see that it resets. So the people that work really well with us are the people that have tried before and they realize I need something different. I need something that adapts truly to me. And the thing that we focus on doing is making sure it's always easy, enjoyable, and effective. Because if we nail those three things, the person always exhibits that behavior. When it comes to their nutrition, when it comes to their exercise, it's about finding what they love to do that gets them the result and that feels relatively easy. And if they do that for long enough, as you know, with the effect of compounding, you end up with exceptional results. And it becomes the true identity of the person that becomes actually them instead of them trying to force themselves to do something that they actually don't want to do.
The first business that you were
Yeah.
in, that, you were asking like 6 questions and then you would
Yeah.
find the right product. And also when you were trying to sell into these
Hmm.
big enterprises, you had
Yeah.
like 100 different questions that you would ask.
Hmm.
Uh, Is there a lot of that discovery and then you come up with a solution based that's very customized?
100%. So we very, you need to really understand what people are going through And oftentimes, I think one of the things that I've noticed so different from selling like B2B software, that's a lot of logic. When you're talking a lot about health, a lot of it can be emotional. And a lot of the times, like just because you eat every day doesn't mean that you understand what you're actually eating, right? Most people, if you said, what did you eat last Thursday? We have no idea. So it's not, even though we're eating, we do it kind of just going day by day without really thinking about it. A lot of people tell you, I eat healthy, but healthy could mean eating for like reducing fat, eating for energy, eating for longevity, eating for like muscle growth, this eating for performance. There's so many ways that you can eat. What does really eating healthy mean?
And you help them also with their workout regime, their nutrition, and it's very customized, right? Based
Correct. Yeah.
on like intake questions, and they end up, are they working with, like, you're assigning them a particular person or coach?
The thing that we do that's, I would say, quite special is that we have a trainer, a nutritionist, and a psychologist, all with a master's or PhD. So we believe in giving you a team to help you because you're only as good as what you're weakest at. If you're exercising all the time, but your nutrition is not in check, it doesn't really like get you what you really want. And same vice versa. Or if your mindset's not in the right place and you've got poor habits, that holds you back. So you're only as good as what you're weakest in. And that's why we build a team that we can help you with whatever it is that you need as you're going through the whole journey. Um, Another thing that we do, I think that's really interesting and unique is that we've seen research that basically says 30% of outcomes between a coach and their patient comes from their relationship. And the biggest way that we can make sure that the relationship works is that we psychologically profile each of our coaches and each of our clients. And then we match them with the right people. So they're already kind of like made to work together better and they know how to communicate with each other. So we've been doing that as well. And that's seeing like exceptional results, basically. Very, very different.
And that's my area of expertise. I used to
Mhm.
teach using behavioral analytics to lead high
Yeah.
performing teams at MIT. What assessment are you using?
So we work with a PhD psychologist, and we actually created our own. So
Oh,
it's
good.
more around understanding the way that the person thinks, and in particular around their health. So what's fascinating is you've got a lot of people, let's say stereotypical type A businessman, for example. Like, I need to look at the data. I'm going to follow this, and I'm data driven, and they're doing everything like this. But you look at the eating behavior, it doesn't actually align with what they normally do at work, which is probably how they have a huge part of their identity associated with themselves. So even you notice when they're talking to you first, they're talking in that way. But in reality, when you observe their behavior, it's very emotional when it comes to what they're eating. And that's the polar opposite of what they're actually doing. So you actually want somebody that will be more in contact with their emotion and their feelings and help them feel more confident to do it. So then eventually they become themselves. So that's really what we do.
Great. Is there any question I should have asked that you wanted to answer that I didn't?
I don't think so. I think you did absolutely exceptional research and made the conversation incredibly enjoyable.
I'd be interested myself in taking that psychological profile just
Brilliant.
to see what it shows and who I'd be matched up with. But it sounds pretty interesting. But I didn't ask you the business model. So how do
Sure.
you, if somebody wants to sign up with you and they're listening
Yeah.
anywhere in the world to this, how do they do it? What does it cost?
Yeah. So we charge $1,500 a month for our service, and we work on a minimum of a 12-month term, and then beyond that, it rolls month to month. And the reason we do this is because we're looking to take the person, one, getting people that are really committed. They're not looking for a sprint because a sprint makes you do something aggressive that you don't want to keep doing later on. And we don't want that. We want to make sure we can do it in a sustainable way. You go through all of the seasons, winter, summer, we see how you're eating, how you're navigating everything. And then off the back of that, once we get you into a place that you want, we've got your habits in order, the results you want, we move you over to a place where either if your goals haven't changed and you want to maintain that, we teach you how you can actually keep it. Basically, the goal there is to teach you how to keep it with the least amount of friction possible. So even in the busiest times when life gets difficult, you can always stay where that line is. So, I can always maintain a high peak shape for myself to lead a better life and have a good and strong foundation to get me through it.
How often does the coach meet, I assume by Zoom, with the client?
It's called Daily Body Coach because we typically interact on a daily basis.
Okay.
Now, what we do is the interaction depends on the individual. So we don't cap them on the amount of communication. We say we want to give you exactly what you need, no more, no less, to get the outcome that you want. And that might mean that we do something extreme. There's actually a kind of famous client that we have that I'm moving into his house in 3 weeks for
Oh,
5 days. So whatever it takes to get it done, I'll always make sure that it gets done. So we'll apply the appropriate level of effort for the desired outcome that the client requires.
I have a program
Mm.
I'm doing now for 12 weeks, and my Aura ring is connected to,
Mhm.
so they can
Yeah.
see my HRV and all that. Do you guys do that too?
We connect all of your wearables if that's something that you have. We want to cut through the noise of the industry because I find that people are overcomplicating so many things. And like really with good training, exercise, your nutrition being in order and a good mindset, you can have everything that you want and then feel free as well. And one thing that I really want all of our clients to take away is the confidence when you hear your friends are doing X, Y, and Z, you don't even care. You're just like, I know I'm doing what's exactly best for me. And I have my body as a vehicle to enjoy my life, not to be obsessed by it and get lost by it and wonder if I'm doing the right thing, just to maximize my life and longevity and have a good time, look good, move well, have fun.
What's the magic to get them to do the things they know they should be doing, but they're not doing?
So, what's fascinating is that once you lose motivation, that's when all of the learning takes place. And that's the benefit of coaching. So, same thing like in business, right? When everything's going up and to the right, we don't learn that much. We're just like going day by day. Yeah, this is awesome. But motivation is 100% likely to disappear at some point. And so
Mhm.
at that point, that's when the cracks begin to show. So if you imagine somebody for 90 days, they're eating so perfectly, even imagine the same meal every day, which is not a good idea, but imagine they're doing that. A nutritionist would have no feedback for them over those 90 days. But on day 91, when they start to deviate, that's when they show all of the things that we need to work on. And that's the magic. You have to be there at that point. When you do like these sprints, 90 days, 12 weeks, etc., they do it. They can be motivated through that time. They do it and then they leave and not much happens afterwards. So we wait for them to have that motivation dip. And what we'll do is we'll understand that there's usually like 5 main reasons people deviate. The first one is that an input can cause an output in behavior. So for example, maybe you're going out with your wife for dinner later on. You eat less at lunchtime. Now, you think you're being good, and the problem is you get to dinner, you don't control the quality of the food, and now you're really hungry. So you'll consume more than you actually intended to. And you're like, damn, I lacked willpower. The truth is not. You actually set yourself up for that behavior to actually occur. It's the same thing like going to the grocery store while hungry. You're human. You're very, very likely to buy more than you would have. The second thing is around knowledge. And so we have a multidisciplinary team that have masters or PhD in their area to make sure that you're just being guided in the right way. And you have the knowledge only that you need for yourself and your life and your family, no one else. The next thing is that we identify processes and systems that the person needs. So, for example, we start seeing, Charlie goes off track when he's in back-to-back meetings, or if he's got 4 podcasts in a row, he deviates, or maybe he forgets to eat totally, and then later on he does something else. We'll start to notice what those behaviors are and come up with strategies for you. So, imagine an onboarding process for one of your team. You'd see, I theoretically I put one together, it looked good, but it keeps failing here. We fill those gaps each time.
Right.
And the last thing is around habits. So those are the ways that we analyze what the person is doing. And we've got many other techniques also that we do to help set up the initial plan to be also have a higher chance of success to start correctly too.
That makes sense. I remember I had gotten my body fat down to like 10% for a few
Wow.
years. And what I learned was I had to say 5 days I was on plan during the week, and 2 days I could cheat, eat, do anything I wanted,
Hmm.
which was usually Friday and Saturday.
Okay.
Friday night, all day Saturday. And
Yeah.
I found that I would get back by Friday or Thursday, I was back to 10%. And if
Yeah.
I knew I didn't have to be perfect all the time, just 5 days out of 7, I would be fine. That worked for me because I agree with you. It's very hard to keep up. And then if you slip, then it's hard to get back on track.
For sure. And I think, it's a fascinating thing because if you look, let's say at nutrition, if we're eating like 3 times a day, times 365 days minimum, we're eating at least 1,000 times per year. So oftentimes people feel that they're failing when they're having like a few meals off. And it's like, no, zoom out. You have 1,000 meals that you're eating in a year. Do you really think you're going to get all of them correct? Even bodybuilders have on season and off season because they can't sustain what they do. So we need to really reframe the way that we're looking at it and understand that your health is, you're in it for the long game. And it's actually balance that wins. It's not sexy, but that's the truth.
One of the things I started doing a couple of years ago, I started doing a 7-day fast once a year. And there's so many benefits. And when you've actually completed a 7-day fast, the first 3 days are hard, but day 4, 5, 6, 7, you're not even hungry. Your brain is like operating like that movie Limitless. The guy takes a pill and he's like, and you don't need that much sleep because your body's not like tired or digesting. And the benefits are amazing, but it's a kind of a radical thing. But anyway, this has been amazing. If somebody wants to sign up with your company, what's your website that we can put out there?
You can head over to dailybodycoach.com.
And if they're in Spain or Mexico, multi-language, doesn't matter?
We're totally fine. Like, we work globally. So yeah, all of our customers are really spread out. Probably 90% though are based in the US. And then the rest would be a lot of people in like London, in Switzerland, in Dubai, like around those regions as well. So that's typically where we see the concentration.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charlie.
Much appreciate it.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.